Hello everyone, I am Ahmad Rithaudin Noor, and on behalf of our research team, we'll be presenting our research entitled Navigating Inclusion, Revisiting the Learning and Facilitating Experienced by Students with Disabilities in Selangor, Malaysia. These presentations will be divided into sections, namely the introduction, methodology, results, discussion, conclusions and recommendations, and finally, the acknowledgement. In Malaysia, there are ongoing initiatives aimed at fostering disability inclusion and mitigating prejudice against individuals with disabilities. The Persons with Disabilities Act of 2008 plays a vital role in this task, recognizing the unique challenges faced by individuals with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or emotional disabilities. Under this act, Malaysia has not merely achieved notable progress in enhancing accessibility and promoting equitable opportunities for those with disabilities, but the legislation places significant emphasis on the significance of inclusive education, thereby creating opportunities for those with disabilities to obtain high-quality education and vocational training. On this note, educational institutions are strongly encouraged to offer essential accommodations and support services, creating an inclusive environment that promotes academic success for all students, irrespective of their disability. The importance of inclusiveness in higher education in this Act is comparable to the Malaysian Education Blueprint 2015-2025 for higher education and includes ways to guarantee accessibility and support for students with disabilities. As the National Education Philosophy pledges a continuous efforts towards further developing individual potential, similarly, the Act aspires to enhance equal learning opportunities by empowering students with disabilities through education, including in higher education institutions. To facilitate the full participation of students with disabilities in the higher education setting, which is crucial for their competitiveness and sustainability throughout their academic pursuits, it is necessary to thoroughly examine all aspects of their education, including but not limited to the cost of living, financial aid, learning and facilitating support, and their overall university experience. On the other hand, despite the aforementioned findings on the challenges faced by students with disabilities, the provision of equal opportunity in learning and facilitating requires similar attentions towards navigating into exclusive higher education institution. Equal opportunity does not mean providing everyone with similar treatment, but rather elevating one's potential throughout their year in the educational system. In the same way, references discussed equal opportunity in higher education as a fundamental principle that acknowledges and respects the unique needs and capabilities of each student, including those with disabilities. It recognizes that not all students start from the same point or have the same abilities, and that providing equal opportunity means ensuring that all students have the support and resources they need to reach their full potential throughout their educational journey. Within the context, learning and facilitation refers not merely to their life in higher education institution, but also to the dynamic exchange between students and educators, encompassing the processes of teaching, learning, and knowledge acquisitions. Enhancements in the methods of learning and facilitating within higher education institutions have the potential to significantly improve the overall student experience in the higher education institutions. Therefore, this study aims to investigate the experience of learning and facilitating of students with disabilities in higher education institutions in the Selangor state of Malaysia. Through this study, the researchers seek to identify the barriers and challenges that students with disabilities encounter and to provide recommendations for improving the current state of learning and facilitating. Five out of 16 higher education institutions in Selangor, inclusive of 5 public universities, 3 polytechnics, and 9 community colleges, only 6 of them formally accepted students with disabilities into their system. This is represented by 4 public universities, 1 polytechnic, and 1 community college. The combination of this enrollment from the 6 higher education institutes resulted in a total of 619 students with disabilities pursuing their education at the tertiary level. On another note, there is a lack of data available to depict the enrollment of students with disabilities in 26 private universities in Selangor. All 50 students with disabilities involved fulfilled the criterion set. This research was carried out by utilizing a quantitative research methodology which entailed the collection and examination of quantitative data by means of a series of online questionnaires. The participants were chosen using the purposive sample method, a disability card holder issued by the Social Welfare Department, and volunteered to take part in this research. In addition, the research was carried out in a manner that was compliant with the pre-existing ethical guidelines, and the only individuals who had their participation authorized were those who gave their informed consent in writing. The study is intended for all students with disabilities and graduates of higher education institutes in Selangor State, Malaysia, across all educational levels. The questionnaire provided to the respondents consisted of Section A for demographics and Section B for learning and facilitation experiences. Section B utilizes closed-ended questions with a fixed range of possible answers using a 5-point Likert scale to measure all variables. The items were modified to get the required responses to answer the research questions. The last part, Section C, is an open-ended questions to examine the needs of students with disabilities pertaining to learning and facilitation. The study applied descriptive statistics, mean and standard deviation, and meanwhile, for the open-ended questions, the result of the study were reportedly thematically. The work underwent a thorough assessment by the Research Ethics Committee and confirms to the established ethical guidelines. The REC granted approval for the study to commence, and so ensuring the protection of participants' rights and the mitigation of any potential hazards. The participants were provided with informed consent forms and were well informed of confidentiality. Anonymity was maintained throughout the study and the data was stored securely. This table presents the breakdown of 50 respondents from 4 higher education institutions and 1 private university in Selangor according to gender, level of study, and category of disability. As can be seen from the table, 64% were male and 36% were female. Almost half of the participants were pursuing a degree, 20% in diploma program, 12% in postgraduate master's degree, and 4 in PhD programs. Above all, 4 were represented by alumni. As can be seen, physical disabilities were the most frequently reported by the respondents, with 46% participants indicating such conditions. 18% participants reported being blind or partially blind and deaf or partially deaf respectively, while the remaining 10% respondents had learning disabilities, 2% with speech disability, and 6% with mental disabilities. As shown in the table, participants were requested to complete a survey that rates their degree of agreement by responding to 9 items to determine their experience learning and facilitating. A lower score on the survey would indicate the greatest barrier to experience learning and facilitating, whereas a higher score would indicate the opposite. Among the experiences, Statement 2 and 1 were rated as the biggest barriers to experience learning and facilitating. The statement, I have faced barriers related to my condition which have impacted my learning environment on campus, lab, workshop, studio, and practical work, with a mean of 2.32 and standard deviation of 1.19. And the statement, I have faced disability-related barriers that have impacted my LE in lectures, with a mean of 2.38 and standard deviation of 1.05 respectively. Meanwhile, it is apparent from this table that respondents rated few barriers to experiencing learning and facilitating, with the statement, I have faced barriers related to my disability which have had an impact on my use of the higher education institutional library where I am currently studying, with a mean of 2.89 and standard deviation of 0.93. And the statement, I have faced barriers related to my condition which have affected my use of learning resources, with a mean of 2.85 and standard deviation of 0.75. What stands out in the table was the average score for Statement 9. My higher education institution is a disabled-friendly institution with disabled-friendly environment, methods of learning and disable management, other related issues, with a mean of 2.0 and standard deviation of 0.9. It's considered high. However, it is worth noting that this does not imply all the facilities and support provided by the higher education institution in Malaysia, particularly in Selangor. The ability to meet disabled-friendly environment criteria perhaps requires another milestone, as there are existing barriers affecting students with disabilities, learning experience in lectures and outside of class, or on-campus laboratories, workshops, studios, and practical work. These findings can work as a foundation to re-evaluate and improve current support system to ensure that students with disabilities can fully participate in all aspects of their educational experience. This includes removing specific barriers in lectures, practical work, and other hands-on learning environment, thus creating an enabling environment that provides a positive learning experience for individuals with disabilities in the classroom. As presented in the table, the majority of students with disability agreed with the Statement 1, which the academic staff have been very supportive and helpful when I approached them with concerns about disability-related barriers that I have experienced. Meanwhile, the statement support staff has been very supportive and helpful when I have approached them, rated at high. In summary, the data suggests that students with disability generally perceived a high level of support and helpfulness from both academic and support staff at the university studied. Mean scores below 2 on the scale indicate an overall positive experience. The relatively small standard deviations indicate that these responses are consistent among students with disabilities, suggesting a relatively homogeneous perception of support from staff. These findings are encouraging for higher education institutions as they indicate that efforts to provide support and accommodations for students with disabilities on the part of both academic and support staff generally meet the needs and expectations of the students. However, it is critical to continue to collect and analyze data like this to ensure continuous improvement in support and services for students with disabilities and to address any areas where the experience are less positive. In addition, it may be beneficial to collect qualitative data or conduct follow-up surveys to gain deeper insight into the student's situation. This table illustrates students with disability experience using service provided by higher education institutions. Almost the majority of 45 or 90% of the respondents are aware of the establishment of a special unit in their current higher education institution with the objective of taking care of special needs and welfare. This high level of awareness suggests that higher education institutions in Selangor have made efforts to communicate the presence of such units to their students with disabilities populations. Meanwhile, 64% of the respondents sought consultation with at least one of their RPT support services pertaining to their disability-related issues which affected their teaching, learning, and assessments experience. This indicates that the substantial portion of students with disabilities is actively seeking and using available support services. From the figures, it is apparent that higher education institutions in Selangor are taking proactive steps to promote inclusive education for all. Prior studies have noticed the importance of exclusivity in higher education institutions. Therefore, based on the result, it seems that there is a definitive need to improve the needs of students with disabilities in Malaysian higher education institutions, especially in Selangor. It is almost certain that improving higher education institution support services for students with disabilities was a key theme mentioned by respondents. One possible explanation is that there is a lack of appropriate social and leadership skills programs such as rehabilitation, leadership development, career counseling, mentorship, and alumni sharing were seen as useful for their future development. Another significant need of students with disabilities requires attention is academic staff and supporting staff in higher education institutions. As discussed earlier, students with disabilities' perceptions of the relationship between academic and support staff and students with disabilities were diverse. This could be a result of some students with disabilities having great experiences with academic and support staff who were very helpful and accommodating. In many cases, these activities lead to increased interest, motivation, and achievement in school for students with disabilities. However, some students with disabilities may have had poor experiences and interactions with faculty and support workers, and this could create an atmosphere of dissatisfaction and isolation. Finally, another important need of students with disability is to provide facilities that require further attention. In this study, it was found that the facilities specifically created for students with disabilities in higher education are not satisfactory. Suggestions include accessible parking, elevators and ramps for wheelchair users, handrails, tactile walkways around the facility, transportation between classes and residence halls, flexible schedules and aids to learning such as textbook with braille tags and information board with braille tags. Despite the importance of these facilities to people with disabilities, many higher education institutions still lack the provision of better facilities to meet the need of people with disabilities. Generally, respondents are satisfied with the accommodations and services provided by the current higher education institutions. And the result of this study supports the notion that higher education institutions plays a central role in creating a conducive, exclusive educational environment for students with disabilities. These students provide invaluable insights in developing policies in assisting higher education institutions for their own inclusive education programs. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to University Technology Mara for funding this study through DUCS 2.0 research grant. Also, we would also like to extend our appreciation to the Ministry of Higher Education for the support and encouragement towards the betterment of higher education for all, including students with disabilities. We are grateful to all participants who voluntarily participated in the study and provided valuable insights. Finally, we thank everyone who have helped us in the successful completion of this research. Thank you.